I knew this kid growing up here in the 80s. I knew this kid. He was getting more involved in theater then, and he liked it a lot. And he was starting to collect some CDs. Do you remember CDs? Okay. These were CDs of musical theater cast albums, original recordings. And every once in a while, when his whole family was gone from the house, he'd take out one of these CDs, put it in the player, click it to a track he really liked, and crank up the stereo as loud as it would go, and sing along with the track. And he'd really get into it. Eyes closed, emotions flowing, voice wailing for the rafters. It was kind of his thing. Yeah. And one time he was doing this kid I knew in the 80s. One time he was doing this. And the stereo up so loud, and he was so engrossed in the song, he didn't hear the garage door open or hear his mom coming in from the garage until he looked over toward the kitchen and saw her there with apparently just her lips moving because the song was so loud and he was wailing to the music. And his heart jumped. He leapt to the stereo to turn it down, and he was a little mortified. She had heard what he was up to, and they were all gone with the stereo, even though she was a bit deafened now from the experience. There was this little feeling inside him that he wanted to just kind of crawl up and disappear or die or something. And he wasn't alone, it turns out. Being in front of others, performing, being seen like that, it is one of the most widely held fears there is. And one of the most potent fears. Psychologists have measured this, in fact. The fear of public speaking is greater than the fear of death. Now think about that. I'm not saying people would rather die than speak in public, though some maybe. But research says when you're measuring the amount of fear, people are afraid of speaking in public more than they are afraid of dying. What do you think that's all about? Is it the fear of being judged, maybe? Is it the shame, something like that? Is it perfectionism? Is it that they might laugh at me? Is it that very human need to put on a poofy black dress and a colorful shawl every once in a while and have my feelings at a group of people? I'm just asking for a friend. Beth. Yeah. Of course, she didn't wear her black robe, so I couldn't throw her under the bus today. How can all of this be scarier than death? Well, I guess it all depends on how you answer the question, what do you think happens when you die? You might recognize that question in its Texas translation, are you saved? We've all got our answers, I know. I think I've shared some of mine. I'm about as saved as I need to be. Or, you betcha. Lately, I've been partial to hell yeah. I can assure you they are not expecting that one. But if you've got some time, you could also ask, saved from what? What do you mean? Of course, we know we're all talking about hell. Ah, I know, gasp. Buckle up, we're gonna hear it a lot today. I don't know how things will go when you ask, saved from what? But longer than there has been a Christian faith, longer than there has been a Jewish faith, longer than really just about any faith, there have always been ideas about what hell is. Just in recorded history, There are artifacts from Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, ancient traditions of Central Asia like Hinduism that talk about what hell might be like. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of my favorites, not to ruin the ending for you, but you've had 4,000 years to read it. Sorry. Contains a description of the land of the dead as a kind of dulled down, dingy version of this life. It's basically the upside down, for those of you who know what Stranger Things is. So, funeral rites in ancient Mesopotamia actually were attempts to lessen the pain that people would feel in the afterlife. It was to make it a little more comfortable for them. In her great book, The History of Hell, Alice Turner explains that in Hinduism alone, there were more than 5,000 different versions of hell. I'm sorry, several million versions of hell. I should probably read what I took the time to write. But whatever your persuasion or your place in history today, in America, the belief of some kind of hell, I'm sorry to tell this room, is alive and well. The Pew Research Center on Religion tells us 58% of Americans believe in hell. And Alice Turner found in her research for her book that only 4% of people believe they might be going there. So 58% believe in hell, 4% think they might go there. So more than half of America believes hell is for other people. There's a Sartre quote there, but I'm not going to do it. Universalism says that hell is for no people, right? You hear me now? Okay. Universalism, in its original context in our faith, comes from the theological concept of universal salvation, which means we are all saved and no one is going to hell. In many circles of faith, make no mistake about it, universalist or universalism is a dirty word. It might be worse than the H word we've been using so much. Ministers from faiths across a wide spectrum, when they embrace universalism or a universalist theology, they lose their jobs. Got it? They lose their jobs for the idea that, you know, an all-powerful, perfect, loving God would not create something and then damn it to eternal hellfire. For the idea of our Christian forebears, in fact, that believed that when Jesus died, he wiped away the sins of the world and then actually believed that. These are the kinds of ideas that get people fired. So the next time someone tells you Unitarian Universalism doesn't have any real theology, you can lay those on them, because people are out there losing their jobs, holding on to some of the foundational theological principles of this faith tradition. If that's not real theology with real impact, I don't really know what is. Now, right after I typed that sentence, there was a knock on my door. I answered it, and two women were there in dresses. And they told me they had the day's Bible verse. They wanted to share it with me and asked if I was busy. I said, well, I'm working on a sermon at the moment, that I've got to give in a little while. And so they said, well, what do you think is the most important issue facing our world today? I said, I think one of the biggest problems facing us as a people is the persistent idea that hell actually exists. Yeah. So I'm hiding out here in the church. No, I'm kidding. And even in declaring this truth that I had just written on a page somewhere to someone who literally asked me for what I thought, I still felt nervous. a little flustered. My voice probably shook a little bit. Like I'd just been out, found out wailing on musical theater selections in the living room or something. And I was scared of what my declaration out into this world of two women in dresses was going to do. Well, she looked me right in the eye. And she said, well, we can see that you're very busy, and we'll come back some other time. Delivering the good news of universalism is hard, even when people knock on my door and ask to hear it. It's like the reverse we do here. Now, I don't believe in an afterlife or of damnation or torment myself. And we've named a few reasons. Some are that it's illogical. Some are debates about the biblical actual definition of hell. But these aren't the only reasons I actually reject the idea. There's some more practical ones. I reject it because of something much deeper in our Puritan roots. Because I think hell is lazy. I said it, it's lazy. Its very nature makes people lazy in taking action to address wrongs now. Because if I believe that justice only comes in the land beyond, then maybe I don't need to fight for justice in this land now. All the concepts of hell that span the ages of human thought find root in a shared impulse for making something right in the next life, when what is wrong is in this life. Right. But when you remove that eternity for retribution, your concept of the universe and all it holds changes forever. When you decide that hell is not real, it changes virtually every decision you make in your life. That is what real theology does. The need for justice, the impulse that tells us it's necessary, that we need justice for all, arises from something very deep in our shared human history. It arises when we learn of the kind of suffering for which the world has no response. It arises when we experience the kind of torment for which the earth has no relief. It arises from the heart that breaks for another breaking heart. If there's no justice in this world, there gotta be some in the next. I mean, I feel that. There's a part of me that wants to hold that, wants to believe that that is there. It's almost easy. It feels good to go there. It does. It has its poetry, this idea of retribution. But when I consider all it means to me, to you, to everyone that I love, I gotta say, hell no. Yeah. The bedrock upon which so much of our fear, our pain, our needing, our yearning, in a word, our humanity rests, is our concern for one another, is our compassion for one another, is our love for one another. That's why it is so offensive to the conscience that our natural human impulse for justice, for compassion, for concern, and for love is tortured into a threat of torment, of epic, even universal proportions. Hell no. The idea that justice is something that someone else does in some other place or some other time is killing people. The idea that justice is only for some people is killing other people. Injustice we witness sticks in our hearts. Witnessing it is a kind of spiritual death in life. And to this I say, hell no. Something has to change, and I believe it can. Our human impulse for justice and the creation of hell as some kind of yearning for divine justice actually teaches us something. What begins as a deep human impulse has the power to shape and change the world and what it believes for millennia. And just as the concept of hell evolved for thousands of years from different writings, through different literature, through different faiths and different folklores into this monstrous breeding ground for fear and fiction that it has become, so can the message of universalism, of a love so powerful that it can pierce the very fabric of time and space, help people be more concerned with this world than the next. I've got to believe that that is part of the learning. It will not happen overnight. It has not happened since 1770, though we've made a good start, I don't mind saying. But it can happen. It can start now. Just go start knocking on some doors and telling people, friends. See what people are getting up to in their homes. The personal, the deep, the sometimes dividing work it takes to become justice-seeking, justice-practicing individuals every single day saves lives. The turn we take to our neighbor to make justice something that might actually come to pass saves lives. Hell no saves lives. And when we as a faith movement of freedom-seeking, freedom-defending communities swing wide our doors to those who seek to sing a new song in their own lives and crank up the volume loud enough for everyone to hear it, that is a faith that saves lives. That is a faith whose song can overpower the bleakest myth born of fear, born of ignorance. That is a faith more concerned with compassion than compliance, with freedom than servitude, with love than fear. Hell no. When we hold on to each other and answer the call that speaks for justice in this life, when we speak in public, as scary as that can be, again and again and again, louder than any fear we have in our hearts, loud enough so the neighbors hear us, that might start as a tune in our own heart that will one day rise in volume and pitch, trilling to a chorus that unites in singing together a song everlasting, a song of justice in our hearts, a song of justice in relations, a song we pray at last for justice in the streets, a song that flows from our universal promise of real, of powerful salvation for every single soul, a song that flows out upon the world as the greatest everlasting love song ever written. That is what our faith can be. That is what our faith must be. And in this life, or in the ones that follow ours, I know that is what this faith will be. May it ever be so. Blessed be, and amen.